Saturn will deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Evolve maze upon the starry sea, we're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Voyage across the celestial sea.
Across the stars, a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. In this realm of shadows, darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets whirl and nebula of fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity. Our spirits transform through supernovas and celestial clouds. Our stellar voyage forever in the skies.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious ore. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the cratered plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars' hidden riches. We're truly bred. We're truly bred.
There we go. Microphone in the correct place. And my quantum monster. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Good morning, Deuce, Plexus, and everyone else. We have a fantastic day. I just realized I didn't do my exercises this morning. Whoops. I found them in the last place I left them. It is exactly where I found them. Also happens to be the last place I looked. Good morning, Zantizon. I hope you're doing well. Caffeine. Well, I'll leave the music up, or I'll dim the microphone, and I'll quickly do my vocal exercises. Yeah, it's going okay. As well as can be. I got absorbed in playing a game and forgot to do my morning exercises, my warm-up exercises for my voice. So, you know, usual stuff. Good morning, Captain No Name. Hope you're doing well. Excuse me. I was playing RimWorld.
To the cosmos, it's my final voyage, leaving Earth behind, seeking stars to my homage in the depths of space. When no one can hear, I'll sing my space shanty. Let the stars draw near, raising up the anchor, setting sails to the sky, bidding farewell to this world, no tears left to cry. With constellations as my compass, I'll navigate to the outer realms where my fate awaits. Oh, I'm a stargazer, drifting through the night, chasing dreams that sparkle like stars shining bright. I'll serenade the heavens with my cosmic lullaby, a space shanty melody as I say my last goodbye.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sail the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, 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 voyage across the celestial sea. Oh.
Alright, I can have the microphone back on. No, it's exhaling and it's, well, humming. So you're exercising the vocal cords. Don't normally talk while inhaling. Although it is possible, it is very uncomfortable. Good morning, everyone. Morning, morning, morning. Jason, Eric. Who? Lord Volpex? Yes. Captain No Name. Who else joined? Well, that seems to be about it. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Yes, well, you can go and decrease the volume. Rolando, good morning. How are you doing? But yes, the straw is funny with it being green. Same as this can. Let me put it in my other hand. It's the quantum monster. So, same substance as the straw. It inserts more voice into my voice. Well, I don't know whether interesting is good or bad, because it could be both. You know what they say? I hope you live in interesting times is a curse, which I agree with. Oh. No, fair enough. Well, hopefully your day's been without incident. It's always the best work day. One that passes fast and without incident. Oh yes, that's good stuff. I was looking for more caffeine. My wife forced me to eat 2 Twinkies for breakfast. It was horrible. I cried a little. She got me in a neck hold and just forced me to eat it. Just eat the Twinkie. It was horrible. I cried a lot. Thankfully, we weren't recording at the time, so I didn't embarrass myself in front of too many people. Fair enough, Plexus. Fair enough. It's always a good thing. Keep to yourself, because that's all you can control. Good morning, Jason. Good morning, Eric. Hope you're doing well. I'm glad that it helps. The workday pass at least a little bit easier. Just for information's sake, my wife's like 5'4", 5'5". She would have to get up onto a stool to get me into a headlock. Fair enough, Plexus. We have somebody else who's also been medically retired. I think it's James, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, it does suck. Especially if you do want to continue doing whatever it was that you were doing. Okay. It's not a bad gig. It's hard work, but it's not a bad gig. Not the worst. Not the best, but not the worst. I think being a shipboard plumber would probably be up there in the worst jobs. That's awesome. Good morning, Banny. I hope you're doing well. And Samantha, I hope you're doing well. The voices are trying to escape in the bubbly format. Or bubbly form, rather than format. But you also never know what field you'll end up in. I mean, I never thought I'd be a YouTuber or a narrator. Of the alien. Which alien? It's all good, Jason. It's all good. I don't expect people to greet me. But I do greet them when I'm warming up, so to speak. Itchy neck. No, I would argue that the best job is the one that pays the bills and gives you personal satisfaction. Paying the bills comes first, unfortunately. The squeaky one. Oh, you mean like, Spifflemonk. Or are you talking about my stubbed toe squeaky voice? Because that's really high. Not the high one.
Why, you mean something like this? Oh my god, you're putting me on the spot. I don't really know what to do.
That sort of voice. The snively voice. Because my high is now a new high.
I can, oh my god.
There's no actual voice at that range, because it takes lots of practice to get a voice, but at least I got that range. Fair enough, Lord Volpex. Even a job that you enjoy is still a job. There will always be days where you don't want to do it, but you have to. And the best you can hope for is a job that has more dull days than exciting days, and more good days than bad days. That's a good job. Anything more than that is a fantastic job.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, mister.
Right. So, a lot of new people here today. It's awesome. The schedule for the recovery. As you may have noticed in the title, I've given up counting how many days after recovery this is. I think this is day number 37. I could be wrong. But, yeah, I have no idea. I think at this point it's irrelevant to count. We still got another month or two to go. So there is that. So in this street, I will be recording videos. But we'll also be going through stories and assigning voices to the characters in the story. If you do not want a spoiler, if you don't want to listen to these before they are polished and edited, then I would recommend that you skip this. I'm doing fine, Eric. And yourself? I mean, I think we've determined that I'm up to about 60% of my stamina. So we're getting there. Really? Give me a second. Alrighty, I apologize for that. There was a package being delivered. For some reason, some couriers don't push the doorbell, they phone, which I suppose actually helps a bit more than usual. So there. The other thing I shall warn you about, in about an hour or two, we're having our groceries delivered, so there'll be a bunch of background noise. Just to make life that much more difficult. But I will bring it up again when it happens. That is funny that you picked your phone up. It's a pleasure, Jason. It was one of the first ones I did from HFY. It was definitely one of the first series I did from HFY. Yes, we do have DoorDash. We call it Mr. Delivery. We've had it for decades now. But we've got grocery delivery services that also drop off groceries. We currently don't have a car, so we need to do it that way around. And then we have courier services, because the post office is unreliable. Good morning, Hyman Mo. I hope you're doing well. Alrighty. Yes. I'm trying to remember. Mr. Delivery's definitely been around for at least 25 years in this country. It actually went out of business and then came back 2019-ish because of, reasons. Reasons we shan't talk about because YouTube doesn't like certain words. Meh. Look, at least you're learning something. free time means free time. But if you can learn something that's going to do you good for the rest of your life, then that takes precedent. Alrighty. We're going to work mode. Alrighty. So this will be Great. Saturday night story? Let me see. Saturday night story. We're getting ahead. We're getting ahead. Which means I'll get sick soon. Which is awesome. Especially going into winter. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Cool. I just got my channel banned. Because I can't understand what I'm saying. See? See. Plexus, I live in one of the most corrupt countries in Africa. So, if you're going through the postal service, it is a miracle that you get it at all. Either it'll be lost or stolen. Or take 6 months. That's the other thing. Recently, it was last year, I think, I accidentally sent something through the normal post office. It took 6 months to get to me. It took 3 days to get to South Africa, and then 6 months to get I think it's 15, 20 kilometers from the airport to my house. It was fantastic. And you can't even phone them up and say, I'll come pick it up, because they don't accept that answer. That's awesome. Alright, so I have code words. Yeah, courier service is pretty much the only option. We've got a whole bunch of different options. One of the ones which we like more at this moment is the locker setup. So instead of delivering it to the house, they deliver it to a locker in the shopping centers. So I think I can't remember who it is, Psuedo, I think. They've got like these massive lockers, and they lock it in there, and they give it a code, and they send you the code. So you can go to the shopping center, enter in the code, and get whatever it is that you wanted. So that's pretty popular these days. Yeah, not quite a PO box, but very. It's all like a one-time use PO box. That sounds about right, Mo. Yeah, it does. Okay, so for those wondering, I have 24 voices. Plus a couple extras, with codes on them. And then these numbers, or these here that I'm entering in, ties into a specific voice. M1 is my natural male voice, and F1 is just the first female voice. Good morning, Crusader. I've been doing okay, thanks. Glad to hear that you're doing well. Shiner spoke, however. Okay. M3. Why not? Snooty voice.
Yeah, of course, Shy. We were probably just playfully jostled.
Yeah, something like that. No, that was the cowardly voice. That wasn't the... Okay, we've got two voices. F1. Okay, then we've got the mother. I think this one will be F2, which is Snooty female voice. And any voice, name, just assume that there are inverted commas. Female voice. F1. M1. 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 Good morning, Thomas. I hope you're doing well. I think that the problem with the post office is actually quite a common problem. I think the US is one of the few places that have it sorted, mostly. Taco Tuesday was quite funny, and then the hot male chicken one was also, that one was funny. That one had me howling. Took me 5 minutes just to do the title. Leone. That's a very South African name. Sorry, there was a bug flying in front of my face. Yeah, very much. I'm doing as well as can be, Thomas. Busy building up the old stamina again. And we're getting there. Every day a little bit stronger, a little bit better. Hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we can start getting close to full. Actually, it'll probably take a month or two. I have no idea who this is. This is Tom. We'll give him an old man voice. I thought we were far too out there. Rah, 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 rah. Rah, 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 rah. Captain? It was okay. It was a lot better at one point. But I think they're just mostly underfunded these days. I know the old house, the closest post office had to close down because there wasn't enough money. So with them conglomerating the post offices, it puts more stress on their staff. Which isn't great. Well, that seems fair, Eric. I think making it a federal offense, and a pretty strict one, would deter most people. Good morning, Donald. I hope you're doing well. Well, Crusader. A lot of stuff is also still struggling from post 4-letter words that I can't say, that, envelop the world. I know for my wife, it took us a couple months to get documents. And then to renew a license was taking 18 months because of just so much backlog. Yeah, but the pandemic definitely made it worse. It's usual here. They put in an extension for the renewals, but yeah, it's pretty usual here. Most things take quite a long time. Look, I mean, other countries, the same problem. England took me 6 months or 5 months to get my passport. And they were on strike at the time, so, Good morning, Kandaria. Hope you're doing well. Excuse me. Right. Oh, right. Captain. We'll go with M10, I think. That's fair. Every day that you're above the ground is a better grade than any day below the ground. Unless you're a miner, but then it's normal, I suppose. Diggy holes, indeed. So, I think we still hold the record for the South Africa. Not me. I didn't do anything. For the deepest mine in the world, there are people that work in the mines, and they're 4 to 5 kilometers below ground. Good morning, Hawkfalls. Hope you're doing well. Takes like an hour to get down. You have to use multiple lifts. Elevators. This is very weird writing. This is very internet writing rather than actual writing style. I'm not mocking the author or anything, it's just this is acceptable on a web platform, but it probably would not be acceptable in an actual book. Yeah, that is very true. As my dad always said, the grass is greener on the other side because they got more crap over there. More fertilizer. Fertilizer. Who's talking? Alan. Alan's the captain. M10. We haven't got much in the way of weapons on us, and we see that you all don't appear to be doing any firing. This is an Americanish accent. Hey, Dara. Who's talking? I think this is going to be probably Magic the Gathering at the moment. Yes. Although it doesn't normally get up on my desk. It's not really a desk cat. I say that, but it was all over my desk this morning. Hadira's captain. So this is going to be an F3, I think. This ship is the last ship. The last. Something like that. Well, I started playing in 1996. And then didn't play for a very long time. I played until mid-2000s and then didn't play for like 20 years. And then I frowned at the speech. It was too weak, too frightened, and far too emotive. And the words beg. Okay, so she's admonishing herself, so it is the same person. To learn Magic the Gathering. I have no idea. It's because I learned the rules so long ago, before the internet, really. Maybe the professor, but yeah. So that would be go to Lorien Academy. Telarian Academy. I think he has. Not Telarian Academy, that's called Community College. Here we go. This channel might have stuff to teach you magic, but I'm not entirely sure. I know he does how-tos sometimes. Okay. Their voices. I mean, sometimes I watch his stuff, but not all the time. Pleasure. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure whether he does. Also, me specifically, I play a subtype called Commander. I say that like it's some unknown thing, but it's the most popular format currently in Magic the Gathering. But the rules, the basic rules, are the same in all formats. M10, M1, I think this is M10. Yes, EDH. Elder Dragon Highlander. I do know when I started playing again, this was 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I went to the LGS. It's the same LGS that's always been around. I went there and I said, you know, what is the best modern format? Well, you know, because the last time I played, there was only one format. It was just Magic the Gathering. Since then, there's 100 formats out, and one of them is actually called Modern. It's one of the more popular ones. So they all looked at me confused, like, what do you mean, Modern? You know, of course the rules are different for Modern than, you know, what you're used to. And it took me a little while to figure out that Modern was a format. Rather than, you know, Modern cards as in cards being released recently. It was a very funny interaction. To me, I find humor in a lot of things. Wait. Region Dorian acting captain. I have a quick. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good sub-game to play. They did release a new sub-game as well, or in Thunder Junction. I didn't specifically look up the rules. A couple questions to ask to make sure that I'm not about to do something stupid. Also, cause a very human statement. Blunt, potentially sarcastic, and if nothing else, very straightforward and open. First, how far you guys from the safe zone? We don't have maps charting the limits of the banana tree in space. They should have been called the Benadryl. Just fall asleep. The captain answered. Only a few hours of travel now. Okay, so we're having a one-sided conversation. So this is all M10. Meh. Well, when you're making fun of the doctors who are about to operate on you, you probably should hold back. The throat's doing well. According to the doctor, I have full range for the first time in pretty much ever. As we've figured out. Stamina, however, is still lacking, but we'll get there. The streams and the narrations help build up that stamina. So it'll probably be another month or two before we're back up to 100% stamina. A Belgian Shepherd. I have that.
No, probably something like this.
I'd have to see a speech pattern to more accurately give a voice. But as far as I remember, Belgian Shepherds aren't as hyperactive as most of the other Shepherd species. So that they speak in a determined fashion. Maybe a bit slower. Basically this is exercise. It's work and exercise. It's like strengthening any muscle. You need to do the thing to strengthen it. So I decided instead of just talking, I might as well stream and narrate. That way I can earn some money while I recover. Thank you, Kendari. Well, we'll get there. I'm not worried. If there were going to be any complications to the surgery, they would have reared their heads already. Oh, that's not good, Stephen. I do hope that it goes well. I actually know somebody went for heart surgery this year. Earlier this year. Thank you, Kandaria. It's very much appreciated for the kind words. And there we go, ladies and gents. We have reached the end of the story. It is pretty long. It's, what is it? Let me have a look here. 30 minutes. It's a good chunky story. I think that's a bit past chunky. Just a teeny tiny itty bit past chunky. Well, it is very much appreciated, Kandaria. Normally, horror people just stick with horror, and sci-fi people stick with sci-fi. But I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Okay, well, that sounds like they're on the ball with what they need to do. Alright. For those of you that are new, which seems like most of you are new, there's a lot of new names today, which is awesome. So I'm going to narrate now. Specifically, I'm going to record the story, which means we go into recording mode. This is recording mode. Why am I off center? There we go. Recording mode is the green screen's out. There's no background. There's no text. This is the raw footage that will be used in the video, and the video editing software is way better at removing the green screen than the streaming software. So that's the explanation. The other thing is, while I'm reading, I will be paying minimal attention to chat. I hope you all understand. Having to stop every so often to read chat will slow the process down as well, and also mess with the flow, if that makes sense. So for the next 30 to 45 minutes, I shall be ignoring you. And it's not anything you've done, don't worry. It's just the way it is. About my camera, that's why. Give me a sec. Alright, thank you for that. For some reason my recording software was all the way off the screen, so I couldn't see that. Thank you, Kandaria, for becoming a member. It is very much appreciated. Ah, yes. Zanti, I enjoyed that. It's so different from what we normally do that it puts a lot of extra stress on us to work for it, but we might get back to that at some point. So, those of you who don't know, we have a SCP channel, but it's not an SCP channel. It's, what do we call it? Imagining a true crime YouTube channel in the universe where SCP is real. So that's kind of the premise of the horror channel. But we have to write the stories ourselves and then do full editing, which takes up a lot of time. We spend most of our time on this, which is understandable because this is what brings home the money. So I think we've got 4 or 5 stories on there currently. Right, what are you doing? Recording software and recording software. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Recording video, recording audio, taking glasses off, and away we go. Thank you very much, Eric, for the kind words. It's very much appreciated. I'm trying to remember what the channel was called. We don't update it very often. Yeah, I think it's called, where is it? The Secrets, Crime and Paranormal channel. I'm just trying to get you a link. Before we start recording too much. There we go. That is the horror channel. Yeah. Well, I packed my lunch under my beard. Normally works out quite nicely. Anyways, I'm going to start narrating and I'm going to ignore you. I will see you when I get back. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read it for your entertainment. Now, the like button has been a little bit lonely recently, so if you could go and just give it a little tap, just to remind it that in this big, scary world, it is not truly alone, I would be very much appreciative. Also, while you're doing that, if you're not already, please subscribe if you enjoy this sort of content. But more importantly, onto the story. Son of Hephaestus, written by Drachgraith. Another boom shocked the ship to the side. The Claxons rose. The Claxons continued their waiting, though there wasn't much point for an alarm to alert you to the situation you cannot fix. The shock was less pronounced here, nearer the center of the ship, where the internalized stabilizers had more time and space to distribute the force of the motion. But it was still enough to almost knock the woman and her children off their feet. The tallest child, Osric, kept a tight grip on his younger sister's shoulder. He steadied them with one. and steadied them when one started to fall. Haydera, his mother, stood looking nervous in the communal living unit she and her 3 offspring shared, a small set of rooms nestled in the port-side corridor of the great evacuation ship, and looked up at the spinning warning light meant to inform her to keep her children strapped into their safety chairs and safety harnesses. Even as she watched, the light went out. It still spun, so it wasn't a complete power failure. But the light was dulled to the point of near invisibility, and Haydera knew that couldn't be a good thing. Was now the time to put her children somewhere else? Was there anywhere else? Her thoughts were interrupted abruptly when Cheyenne, her littlest daughter, ran up and grabbed her by the leg, holding almost painfully tight. She was small, but strong, and even in this moment of uncertainty, Haydera felt a small swell of pride in that fact. This evaporated, replaced with shame, fear, and uncertainty the minute Cheyenne spoke. However.
Mama,
She asked, her voice timid and yet somehow tight.
is it over?
No, it wasn't over. The light going out wasn't the end. It wasn't a signal that they'd escaped. It was more of a warning of a different kind. You're done, now it said. There was nowhere left to turn. Osric answered, however, leaving his mother to stare both proudly and ashamedly at him as he gave the answer she knew that she should have given.
Now, of course, Shy. We were probably just bouncing around in some asteroids.
He reached out to where Cheyenne gripped her mother's leg and playfully jostled her, which immediately caused her to jiggle and let go of Haydera's leg. Children were always so astonishingly quick to recover from fear like this. Osric then went a step further, saving Haydera, as she felt the upwelling of emotion rise at her careful conscience. Osric then went a step further, saving Haydera, as she felt an upwelling of emotion rise in his careful, considered response to the situation. He told Cheyenne and their middle sister, Urae, to head to the safety chairs, which had large stabilizing supports in the base to prevent anything less than a catastrophic turbulence from moving them, and strap in, just in case, so that he and Mama could go and check up top, and maybe get something to eat. If Haydera had been human, there would have been tears in her eyes. Her own kind's emotional responses, however, were far less obvious to onlookers, despite the similarity of their binocular vision builds. No, Haydera was a Taurian, and that meant that she didn't show her emotions in anything more than the tight way her voice sounded as she placed her hand on Osric's back and ushered him out of the room, telling her daughters,
We'll be back. Ozzy here has a good idea. We'll go get some snacks.
When the door closed behind them, Haydera turned to Osric as if to thank him, but he wasn't paying attention. At a jog, he was taking off away from her, running to the front of the ship, to the great central zone of the evacuation ship, where there'd be viewports and a chance to know for absolute certain what was happening. He didn't have time for his mother's praise, and he didn't have time to help her feel any better. He was desperate to know, truly know, what was going on. Haydera followed close behind. The Taurian people had been at war with the Benedraians for decades. More accurately, they'd been declared war upon. They never had much of a chance to war themselves, as their species wasn't known for its predatory instincts. Its weapons technology, or anything of that nature. They were communicators, translators, researchers, and most importantly, new to the Interspecies Council, and still even now waiting on full acceptance from a Class 1 species, worthy of full rights and privileges amongst other higher forms of the galaxy. Simply put, they were not prepared to fight back in any meaningful way. The Council made a token efforts to help, they provided transport ships from some of the first planets to be attacked by the Benedrains, or at least the planets upon which living Taurians had some chance of still being found. When the conflict had arisen, the Council had censured the Benedrains pending the Class 1 species classification, which should have at least guaranteed a few years of peace. It hadn't. They'd even found a dozen or so evacuation ships like this one. Massive, high-powered ships that could transport the last few Tauran planets worth of citizens to protect. High-powered ships that could transport the last few Taurian planets worth of citizens to a protected reach of space, far from the Benedrains' influence. High-powered ships that could transport the last few Taurans planets worth of citizens to a protected reach of space, far from the Benedrains' influence. Admittedly, Haydera and her children were the last such ship, and others having been blasted to microscopic dust and burned to useless metal slag before they escaped the system. But it was something. The Council could state with honesty that they had attempted to help. Perhaps the core issue was the Benedrain rationale. They didn't want the Taurians dead because of some slight or because of some political advantage. They wanted the Taurians dead because they were upset that another potentially Class 1 species was found in a quadrant of space near their home worlds, and somehow, due to a strange twist of psychological development amongst their species, this was seen as a justifiable reason to commit this grand genocide. Because the Taurians just happened to be from a planet that was, at a galactic scale, very close to the Benedrains' long-destroyed homeworld. It didn't matter that the Benedrains no longer lived there. It was just the principle of the matter. And as the last few of the evacuation ships had been torn apart, as the last of the Taurians struggled to survive, this final ship was sent out. It took an uncharted star route, a terribly dangerous path through areas of space studied only briefly with far-reaching gravitic analyzers. And they had almost made it. Less than a week of travel before leaving the furthest outer reaches of the Benedrain system cluster, they'd been caught. 3 months of travel behind, less than a tenth as long left before they were safe, and the Taurians were spotted by one of the massive enforcement-class starships, a relatively weak example of Benedrain military technology. There was no reason for it to even be out here in this empty reach of space, but the Benedrains realized one of the evacuation ships was missing and charted the most likely paths of flight, and had somehow, in the worst example of luck possible, found them. Now the evacuation ship was taking heavy fire, and its lack of anything remotely capable of damaging a ship like the enforcement class meant that all it could do was hobble forward, hoping they'd lose interest, or at the least hoping some twist of fate might save them. A few naive Taurians even thought that the incredibly strong hull shields might take the attack too frustrating. A few naive Taurians even thought that the incredibly strong hull shields might make the attack too frustrating for the Benedrains. Unlike the other ships that had been attacked, they were now only under attack by an enforcement-class ship, designed for blockade control and long-term comforts for its passengers, not war. After 2 hours of non-stop attacks against the evacuation ship's massive hull, the Taurians no longer held any delusions about the enforcement ship giving up on following them. After 6 hours, when the largest of the outer shields died, the shield meant to stop debris from puncturing the ship as it sped through space. They realized their inner shields were designed for deflecting physical damage and weren't holding up well against the high-charge blasts from the plasma launchers. An hour after that, when Haydera and Osric burst into the central zone, the majority of Gawkers had lost their ability to bear witness to their slow death, and had left their individual pods or rooms, saying their goodbyes. And that's when the third ship appeared, a mere light second away, and thus from far out of visible sight. bursting from a hyperspace trajectory that it had been on for 6 weeks as it traveled from the human homeworld of Earth. The Taurian didn't see it. Their ship didn't track its arrival or warn them of its appearance. But the new ship witnessed them and the presence of the hostile Benedrayans. The ship that had just arrived was identified not by its classification, but by a strange, seemingly random name, as ships tended to be, as human ships tended to be. The ship's rough classification as a mining class wayfarer didn't matter much to its crew, but the name Son of Hephaestus seemed very important to them. It was here in the outer edges of Benedrayan's system quadrant, because of a hunch one miner had that there must be in fact a wealth of heavy density elements of untold composition in the system's ore cloud. Research Research showed that the star at the center had consumed another small star several millennia ago. And new research questioned whether the motion between the two stars had disturbed their collective outer system shells. Captain Allen didn't have much of an idea about the logic behind these conclusions, nor did he particularly care. It was his first command of his own ship, and the Son of Hephaestus was a beautiful craft. He exited hyperspace a few seconds earlier than planned. His view screen lit up with warnings. Other ships were nearby. Plasma activity was being measured, suggesting either proximity to an unexpected star, which made no sense, or weapons being fired in the area. Daryl Allen had literally no idea what to do with that knowledge, and so he simply stared at his view screen, his eyebrows furrowed, and his lips drawn just slightly down into a frown. While he stood there, his second-in-command appeared. Unlike military ships, the rankings of his men had little practical applications, and that might explain why his second-in-command of the ship was the size. And that might explain why the second-in-command of the ship of this size was both an effective lieutenant and the head engineer, and the chief mining officer, representing the company that had financed this little venture. And, of course, his cabin mate, as they doubled up most rooms to ensure that they minimized how much space each person required, to maximize the available size of the hold for when they started trawling the ore for heavy elements. Whatever his classification, Tom was a knowledgeable man who seemed usually keen to watch the view screen zoom too far into space, revealing the distant battle. "Benedrayan!" he spat. "Benedrayan!" he spat. "I thought that we were too far out for the central hub to deal with those bastards." The captain might not know what to do, but he could keep to the social niceties. It gave him a strange sense of comfort to have those to fall back on. We would be if they weren't pursuing her." He paused to shift the view screen to the Taurian ship. "They're firing on whoever this is." Captain Allen had no idea what was going on, of course. He knew the Benedrayans were facing aggressive censure for violent behavior, but the species weren't part of his daily life. Tom Harris, however, knew exactly the history of the Benedrayans and the Taurian conflict. Knew exactly the history of the Benedrayan and Taurian conflict, and immediately shouted upon seeing the ship. "Evacuation! It's the missing evacuation ship!" This outburst left Captain Allen confused, and he turned to face his friend. "It's what?" With a sigh and a flurry of quick words, Tom Harris began to explain. Haydara caught up to Osric and put her hand on his head, a gentle reminder of her presence. She hoped it was reassuring. Staring into the massive view screens and ports in the evacuation ship's central zone, it was hard to imagine anything as frightening as what they saw there. Far off, almost invisible from this distance, the enforcement ship running parallel to them, all the while shooting the dense plasma on an intercept trajectory. all the while shooting the dense plasma on an intercept trajectory. Nearly half the shots hitting their mark as the evacuation ship's damaged systems lost their ability to dodge, with the nearly half the shots hitting their mark. Nearly half the shots hitting their mark as the evacuation ship's damaged systems lost their ability to dodge, with nearly half the shots hitting their mark as the evacuation ship's damaged systems lost the ability to dodge, with nearly the alacrity that they'd had a few hours ago. With nearly the alacrity that they had a few hours before. Osric turned to his mother, and she saw the fear in him. His face was flushed, and the skin around his mouth looked dry, pale, a sharp contrast to the reddened skin the rest of him was showing. In Taurian body language, it was the equivalent of shaking, crying, and going ghostly pale all at once. Haydara tried to pull him close, but seemed unable to act herself. She wasn't as afraid as Osric, but she was somehow still frozen in place. It took a massive effort of will to kneel down and pull her son against her.
You were so brave for the girls,
she whispered in his ear.
Such a brave boy. I don't tell you that enough. You are, though, brave. You are, though, brave and strong, and You are tough, brave, and strong, and I'm proud of you.
Her voice lacked much inflection now. It was nice to say these things, to try and give him comfort, but her voice sounded dead in her own ears. Still, as Osric pulled her in tighter, arms wrapping and crossed behind her back and squeezing tight, she knew that she was doing the best that she could, and he appreciated it. They stood like that for several seconds, unashamed, as the few others remaining in the central zone were obviously too focused on other things to notice the sudden outpouring of unusually open emotions. And then there was a loud alert, a giant view screen. And then there was a loud alert. The giant view screen, as well as the smaller view screens at various viewing stations around the central wall, beeped rapidly for several seconds. Then they zoomed in on the new ship, seemingly on course to intercept the Benedrayans. But the ship was comparatively tiny, and the view screen identified it as a minor vessel, which rarely held the weaponry for major combat. They had powerful laser and plasma-cutting weapons, but only for close-range, extremely specific tasks like mining asteroids. Perhaps it was going to parley with the Benedrayans, hold them up, even for a tiny bit, to let the Taurians escape. The answer became clear when the tiny ship hailed the Taurian evacuation ship, signaling for communications with the master and commander. Signaling for communications with the master and commander of the vessel. He was gone. The ship had no true formal hierarchy, but the senior-most elder of the Taurian Senate alive on the ship had taken the role before now. He'd gone to his room with his wife, and the minute the Benedrayan ship had been spotted, though, and had not come back. Sitting at a seemingly random view screen on the central wall, though, an older woman answered the call and was able to type in the captain code to let her be presented to the newcomers as the ship's leader. Haydara assumed that this must be someone of relative importance, though she wore no clothing of rank and bore no insignia of political affiliation. Still, with so many aboard, it wasn't surprising she had no idea who 99% of the other passengers were. The older woman spoke with the calling captain, Osric, when the alerts had gone off, had pulled away from his mother and was now jogging closer to the woman who answered the call, curious and, if not entirely, hopeful, or at least hoping that this might be their salvation. Haydara followed close behind. And that's when they saw Captain Allen's face in the view screen. A human, similar in so many ways to the Taurians in physiology. They looked almost like they shared the same They looked almost like they shared some ancient ancestry. Of course, no Taurian would be revoltingly hairy, nor would they flash their teeth so often, and the human stubby fingers bandages were the wrong shape, size, and color. But the face wasn't unpleasant,
and the auto-translation software in the ship was informing the old woman/captain at the seat. Haydara decided that, for now, she might as well think of her as the captain, of what his ship was capable of. Alan's translated words told the Taurians, "We haven't got much in the way of weapons to use. We haven't got much in the way of weapons on us, and we see that you all don't appear to be doing any firing. So we're going to just assume, hun, that you all could use some kind of assistance we're not especially capable of giving you." His voice translated oddly, giving it a strange, lilting tone, which she assumed was due to the emotive and odd ways humans communicated, translated through the software. Haydara's captain answered, "This is the last ship, sir. The last. This is what is left of the Taurians. There are a few in deep space, there are a few on diplomatic missions, and there are a few serving in the interspecies alliance as military members. But they are rare and far between. This ship, this is the last of our people. Do you do what you can? We beg of you. This is our last chance." Haydara frowned at that speech. It was too weak, too frightened, and far too emotive. And the words, beg. She was ready to disapprove out of natural habit when she recalled herself and realized that this, if in any moment, was an appropriate place to ignore all social conventions and speak to the humans as bluntly as possible. It must have had a major impact, too, as Captain Allen spoke. "Let me confer with my crew. He turned off his view screen, and so the Taurians at their own view screen. And so the Taurians at their own view screen now gathered into a large growing cluster, waited and waited. For 16 minutes and over a dozen hits from plasma launchers in the distance, they waited. And then the screen turned on once again. It was Captain Allen. "Hello, ma'am," he greeted the Taurian acting captain. "I have to make a quick couple of questions to ask to make sure that I am not about to do something stupid." It was, of course, a very human statement, blunt, potentially sarcastic, and if nothing else, very straightforward and open. "First, how far are you guys from a safe zone? We don't have any maps charting the limits of the Benedrayan space." The captain answered, "Only a few hours of travel now." "How many of you are there, and how many are you on board? And how many are there on board?" Again, she answered quickly and politely. 74 trillion? 78 trillion, 78 billion, 543 million. 78 billion, 543 million. The commas are in the wrong place. 1,000, 100,000. Sorry, they've written a number with the commas in the wrong place. I think it's 7 billion. It's 100. It's 1,000. It's 7,853,160,000. Also, it was just... Oh, okay. I got it. Too many commas. 78,543. 78,543. 16,000 or so of which were children. Captain Allen asked about their speed capabilities, their remaining weapons, if any, their planned route, and more. He even sent over a quick directory of hyperspace routes known only to the humans and a few of their allied races. It showed a safer, quicker route for the evacuation ship to travel, assuming that it got away right now. Then Captain Allen asked a question that made acting captain gasp. But seemed to Haydara to mean slightly less than nothing. "All right, ma'am. I hate to toot my own horn here, but have you folks ever heard of a Titanheart? Human ship about 90 solar years back." When the acting captain bent her head low and began to whisper a prayer of thanks, Haydara realized there was something going on and she wasn't understanding. And Osric tugged at her arm, eager to ask if she had understood something he must have missed. She whispered about her own confusion into his ear, and then turned back to listen. But there was nothing left to listen to. The view screen had gone blank, and the acting captain was still bowed low. Praying, thanking the gods and fates of the universe itself. Well, this seemed rather hopeful. It made Hedera uncomfortable. Not only was prayer a supremely private affair, it was also without context, and therefore especially perplexing. Then she looked over at the larger main view screen above the central zone's main viewing port, and saw a zoomed-in image of what appeared to be a human ship gaining speed. It had begun to glow slightly too, and the readout on the image said that it was now giving off enough radiation to be lethal at a distance of half a mile or so. And the radiation was still building. It was bright enough now to be seen without zoomed screen. It was like a tiny floating star, the only one seeming to move against the backdrop of space. And it was heading faster and faster to the Benedrayans, who had now turned their weaponry upon the human ship, though with little effect. The sun of Hephaestus simply sped up further and grew so brilliantly bright that Hedera, staring from the viewport, had to shield her eyes. Horrified, Hedera realized the humans aboard were dead. Already, now, dead. She didn't understand what was happening for a second longer, but Osric did, as he whispered almost to himself, They're going to hit. They're going to slam the Drayans. And then it happened. The outer shield of the Benedrayan ship held back the blast of perhaps a second. The outer shield of the Benedrayan ship held back the blast for perhaps a second, or a second and a half before it failed. The inner shield didn't even light up, or show the least degree of resistance. And now, there was a massive hole in the central axis of the Benedrayan ship. It wasn't destroyed, truly, but it wasn't capable of chasing them. And unless the ship had the strongest imaginable radiation shielding, the crew was dead. No matter how protected their section of the ship had been from the blast, Hedera fell to her knees and prayed. Osric was reading aloud now. On this new planet named Thalia, there were plenty of places to sit outside and enjoy the weather, and so they'd chosen a nice spot for Osric to practice reading to his sisters. Each was seated perfectly still, listening attentively. Hedera herself was less rigid. Something had seemed to change in her, and she found herself being more expressive and relaxed lately. She was leaning back, her hands splayed out behind her to support herself as she listened. The Titan Heart was a human ship of novel design, continued Osric, meant for heavy mining. Like most human vessels, it used a relatively crude fusion reactor chamber for its energy needs, though it possessed significantly stronger drives for interstellar travel. He continued for a few minutes, explaining the ship's abilities, limitations, and of course, its size. It was close to 5 times the size of a son of Hephaestus, and its crew had been almost 10 times larger. Hedera was ready to let her mind wander, considering these facts, when Osric quietly... Spam! Go away, spam. Hedera was ready to let her mind wander, considering these facts, when Osric quietly cleared his throat and stared at her. She paid attention again, almost laughing at her young son's reprimand, and leaned forward, putting her hands back into her lap. She nodded, gesturing for him to continue. The humans had often claimed that the fusion generator was more of a safety measure than anything else. No civilized people would bother taking a human craft prisoner, knowing that they could overload the fusion reactor. Although, other people have long since abandoned this practice because of its obvious risks if a malfunction were to occur. But human researchers and engineers have appeared to be far more comfortable with the level of risk than most others. Despite their comparatively young civilization and limited technology, they do appear to have a unique good grasp on the fusion and fission of atomic particles. As Osric followed the book's rambling path to discuss the presence of fusion engines on human ships, Hedera's mind drifted. She had gotten this book for Osric when they had landed, and he had continued to pester her for explanations of what he'd seen. Most importantly, He had asked over and over again what the human captain's last words had meant. What was the Titan heart, and what did it have to do with the strange malformation? And what did it have to do with the strange malfunction on the human ship? The one that had let them escape. Haydara explained it to him. Haydara had explained to him that there wasn't a malfunction. Osric hadn't understood. She'd explained that the son of Hephaestus had lacked the weapons to protect the evacuation ship or threaten the Benedrayans, except for their final, most dangerous weapon. The humans had not had a malfunction. They had made a choice. Osric had timidly accepted this answer, but had obviously not understood. This sort of self-sacrifice was not a traditional Turian philosophy, and so he didn't understand it. That was where the book came in. It told the story of the Titan Heart, a massive ship by human standards. Less than a solar century before, it had been carrying one of the greatest treasures humans had found, cargo worth trillions of credits, and a crew of over 400. Had been returning from a government-sponsored trip meant for the humans to show the rest of the species in the council that they had the capacity for more than meant for the humans to show the rest of the species in the council that they had the capacity for more than others assumed. Meant for the humans to show the rest of the species in the council that they had the capacity for far more than what the others assumed, and it had come across a battle in deep space. The attacking/aggressive species involved was not known. No human recorded the event, and the only stories of this had come from the Pelusians, who had been afraid to cause greater anger at them from their attackers by publicly shaming them. Whoever the aggressors had been, most modern stories claimed that it was actually the Benedrayans, Lulpans, or some other equally violent. Whoever the aggressors had been, most modern stories claimed that it was actually the Benedrayans, the Lulpans, or some other equally villainized species. There were far too many species happy to attack humanity on sight, and the Pleiadians were as well. And the Pleiadians were as well. And the Pleiadians as well, so it was difficult to narrow down the attackers. Whatever the case, the book told of the Titan Heart seeing the capital ship slowly being destroyed, while actively signaling their surrender. Council guidelines required that the ship signaling surrender would be boarded, or at the least left alone if they agreed to eject their weaponry and surrender themselves to local legal authorities. Heck, the Taurian evacuation ships had shown how little the Benedrayans seemed to care about the rules of military surrender. They'd been blown up despite their signals. In any case, the stories varied, but the known facts were that the capital ship under attack had belonged to the Plurian fleet and was holding the typical ludicrously overcrowded number for the Plurian ship, and a capital ship at that, 25,000 or so. The Titan Heart had seen them under attack, as their ship had automatically dropped from hyperspace when its route had come too close to the other ships to risk travel at hyperspace speeds. And after seeing what had happened, it had immediately overloaded the fusion reactor and charged into the attacking ship, saving thousands of Plurians and earning the humans this place of honor amongst their people, while gaining them a reputation for idiocy and recklessness amongst the species who felt that it wasn't the humans' business to interfere. This book then explained Osric's question. What had the last question of the human Captain Allen meant when he asked if they had heard of the Titan Heart? Now Osric would be made to understand. He would grow up on Thalia, understanding the terrible cost that had been paid by strangers to allow him to do so. Even the name of the planet was a sign of that debt to humanity. Thalia was the same name as the one of the fabled daughters of the human god Hephaestus. It had been easy to choose a name for the new homeworld, Once this had been suggested, it fit. It was right. They now lived peacefully on their own. They now lived peacefully on their own protected planet, far from Benedreyn's space, rebuilding their kind and their culture on a planet named for Hephaestus' daughter, and they could do so only because of his son, and they could only do so because of his son had given his life that they might live. End of story. Alrighty, back. And let me just catch up with chat quickly. Good morning, Matty D. I hope you're doing well. I'm sorry to hear about the loss. I know this is very disjointed, but unfortunately, it's the way this goes. No, I don't think it ever stops sucking when a pet dies. Well, I'm glad that it helps, Eric. All right. I live in South Africa currently. I am immigrating to Portugal, however. I just need to blow my nose quickly, so we shall do this off camera. Oops, used the wrong picture. All right. That's not good, RVB. No, sorry to hear that. Excuse me. So that was just me normalizing all the audio.
So there isn't any part that's any louder than any other part. Alrighty. I think we're ready for another story. I might take a little bit of a rest. Have a chat with you guys. Perhaps while I do this. Sinuses are still a little poked. But overall better, I think. Right, so this is going to go there, this is going to go there. And this is going to go over here. Should make things complicated. Excuse me. Alrighty. Story number next. Also a longish one. I think this is 22 minutes. Good morning, Rupra. I hope you're doing well. And I hope you're having a fantastic day. Ashutosh. I think that's how it's pronounced. Rupra Khan Ashutosh. I am sorry if I've butchered your name. The amount of butchering I do, you'd imagine I did it for a living. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream, Hawk Force. Yeah, basically, yes. Wouldn't say it's a hobby, I'd say it's a sub-job. A semi-job. Not a problem, Jason. Hopefully it is a fantastic meal. Sounds very nice. There's F1. Excuse me. Yes, so I'm busy assigning voices to the story. So each code is a different voice. Also, welcome to the stream. Thank you for popping past. It's much appreciated. Hopefully you find this interesting. I try to make it as interesting as possible, but it is less than interesting process. So this will be the first part. You'll also see the narration part, but the editing part is done by my wife, so it won't be streamed. That's adding in the background, that's adding in the scrolling text, and all of that stuff. This will be Sunday night's video. Eric, this is a new method that I'm using. I used to do it in my head. But the problem with that is I would get the voices mixed up occasionally. But because my voice was very inconsistent, it didn't make sense using a list of voices, because I would never know which voices I could do on any particular day. But now, since the surgery, I should be a lot more consistent. So that's why we use the code words now. Because I should be able to hit all of these voices every day, if that makes sense. It also helps keep it straight in my head. Better. Yeah, she's the brains of the operation. You missed the part where she forced me to eat Twinkies for breakfast. She jumped up on a stool, grabbed me in a head hold, and then force-fed me Twinkies. Two Twinkies. I might take her to the Human Rights Council. But my wife hasn't always been the editor. It was about 2 years ago she started. She got retrenched. And I said, okay, why not try be the editor? Easier than trying to look for a new job. So she took over the editing from me. Which has allowed us to improve the quality of the video significantly. Yes, the surgeon did insert new voices in. It depends. So I'm guessing going live, you mean a video that's ready for release to the public. So it'll be 6 hours, 7 hours for a 10 to 15 minute story. Somewhere around there. But that doesn't really include, about 6 hours. 6 hours per 20 minutes, I would say. Before we have a YouTube ready. No, it is quick. It is quick, but that's also a lot of practice has gotten us this quick. We have done over 2,000 stories, over 4,000 videos. Good morning, Dogface. I hope you're doing well this day. I hope work is nice and peaceful and going by quickly. Fair enough, Kandaria. I'm glad that we can help you relax after a hard day's work. I say we. The channel is not a we, it's me. It's the royal we. Well, I suppose it is a we, because I wouldn't be doing this without the wife. So, we also works as a me. Yeah, well, let me think. There are roughly, let me check, 2,400-ish one-shots. 2,400 videos. So that'll probably be 3,000 stories, because a lot of videos have two. And then there's probably another 2,000 videos of series, would be my guess. So lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of videos. Well, I'm glad that your work day is almost over. It is 7 minutes till afternoon. Well, that's a lot of writing, 900 one-shots. That's an exceptional amount of writing. Yeah, First Contact was all over the place. With its story. Some chapters were very, very tearjerkery, and then the next one would just be action-packed. Dragon Peanut, thank you very much for the 20 Australian dollar super chat. It is very much appreciated. So we've got people from both sides of the extreme on the time travel index. Australia should be plus 10 to 13, if I remember correctly. USA is minus 10 to 13. Thank you very much for the super sticker, Stephen Ward. It's very much appreciated. So, plus 8, 10, and all of that is GMT plus 8 and 10 or 11. Or UST, UDT is the other way to measure it. Thankfully, all of South Africa is on a single time. But for those who are interested, the Central African time, which is a thing, is CAT, and the abbreviation is CAT. Meow. So Africa measures time in meows. How meow, brown cow. No, but we do have to look at the clock 9 times to get the right reading. Sometimes it does sit on the table and knock other clocks off the table, but eventually you do get the right time. But by that time, it's too late. Yes, it's meow meow. So a common South African, not saying, but thing that people say is now. I'll be there now. Or we're going to the shops now. It just means soon. Thank you very much for the super sticker, Jason. It's very much appreciated. Let me go and look at these super stickers. Still find it funny, because I'm looking at the combined chat. I don't look at the individual things. So it describes to me what the sticker is. And it's a very, very bland description. Nah, yeah. Yes.
truly brag.
Look, if you want to impress a South African, doesn't matter which South African it is, just say how's it when you see them. Pronounced how's it. It is the shortened version of how is it, and most South Africans will know what you're talking about. You don't even have to speak another language, just how's it. This is number 2, story number 2. Yeah, so no is the Afrikaans for now. Even though it sounds like no, bad word. Uganda, my brew. But that would depend on whether they're Afrikaans or not, or no Afrikaans. But how's it is generally, most people know it, whether they speak English or Afrikaans or any one of our other 11 languages. Oh, fair enough. I think there are very similar idioms, there we go, or whatevers, between South African and Australia. Although I'm pretty sure that how's it came from cricket. I could be wrong. Hydration. I'm just going to pop off to the bathroom quickly, and then I'll be right back, and we can record this bad boy. Here's a squirrel. Nope, here's another squirrel, and here's some music.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn, we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate joy, the unexplored galactic highway. Evil maze upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, voyage across the celestial sea.
In the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight. Metal warriors bound by might. Ooh, yeah. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls. A symphony of chaos, where planets whirl and nebula, a fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity, our spirits transform. Through supernovas and celestial clouds, our stellar voyage forever in the skies.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious ore. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, with
And I'm back.
of the cosmic shore.
Thank you, Squirrel,
On this barren
for keeping everyone entertained. Whatchamacallits, yes. Whatchamacallits are a fundamental of engineering.
where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination,
Alrighty, streaming mode initiated.
Mars hidden riches were truly bred.
Anything else? Slang, short? Yep. Yeah, South African slang's weird. It's a combination of like all languages. Anyways, on to the story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, last night, you were all so gracious enough to help the like button with his problems. Now, unfortunately, he has become addicted to it. So, to relieve that stress, you need to click that like button. You need to click that like button so that he gets that dopamine hit that he really needs. While you're at it, might as well hit the subscribe button as well. He's also been lonely. Anyways, on to the story. What Talon and what dreadful claw, written by In Babylon They Wept. Oops. It doesn't help if I don't start the recordings. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, last night I asked you to help the like button out with his little problem. Unfortunately, he has now become addicted to being clicked. So if you could, just click that like button, just give him a little bit of a dopamine hit so that he can survive another day. Also, while you're at it, why don't you just do that to the subscribe button? It is just as desperate as the like button. Anyways, on to the story. what talon and what dreadful claw, written by in Babylon they wept. She watched him walking over the horizon for almost 6 hours now. She loved getting guests, loved seeing the resignation of men half dead with thirst, trading certain death in the sands for possible death in her waters. And they were hers. The promise of Ramses still stood, even if it had been a millennium since the Concord. By right of blood and writ of paper, she was the queen of the deeper dirt, and it was the queen's privilege to choose her guests, and occasionally kill them with her claws. She could have flown over, but she had time, more time than anyone, more than enough time to wait. Her guest was not as half dead. Her guest was not half dead. He was, to be technical, less than a quarter dead, but that was only if you measured things in years. He was young. His face certainly seemed less lined than her own. There wasn't much else that she could judge age from. The lines on her form folded in wings and furs and claws at the same point that his folded into silks and beads. He'd prepared for the meeting by bringing a wealth of spices. It was a trick common to royal travellers. If sweat couldn't be prevented, it could at least be masked. She could still pick traces up of it under the sandalwood and myrrh. But it was pleasant, salty and metallic and sharp, underneath all the soft wisps of smoke. He'd brought her gifts. When she told him that the gifts were not acceptable for passage, he said that wasn't how gifts worked. Gifts weren't given in exchanges. They were given for the joy of giving, and it brought him joy to share with her. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply asked if he intended to cross her. So she simply asked if he intended to cross through her doubt. So he simply asked her if he intended to cross through her doubt. "Maybe," he replied. "What's your price?" "A riddle," she said. "If you get it right, you can pass, but if you get it wrong, I'll devour even your bones." He grinned, and it wasn't false bravado. He'd known the cost before he said it. "I love riddles, I accept." She loved the spot. She loved the tension of it, that singular moment of truth where she wasn't just a mind or a monster, but something stabbing both worlds. She spoke. "I can survive beyond death, but can be broken without force. I can summon without breath, but—" "A promise!" She looked at him wide-eyed. It wasn't her best riddle, but it was one that she'd made herself. It wasn't supposed to be this easy. She let him pass, but she did, to her great shame, sulk. To his credit, he only lingered an hour or so in the shade of the oasis. There was a longing to him that she couldn't describe. It unsettled her, but it went away when he took his camels and continued past, travelling on into the deep dirt. She forgot about his gifts until long after he'd passed the horizon. She'd expected human trinkets, golds and gem, useless baubles. The pelts that had been carefully rolled up and placed inside the chest were strangely thoughtful. She carried them back to her cave and laid them flat across the floor. That night, she slept better than she had in many, many years. In the morning, she woke up and smelled myrrh and was almost happy to imagine the prince coming back. If she was disappointed to realize that the smell was coming from the scent soaked into the furs, that was a secret she could keep even from herself. It was a week before he came back. She recognized the outline on the horizon. She had a good memory, and beyond that, he'd made quite an impression on his first meeting with her. He'd began to run low on his spices, and his clothes were looking far more rumpled than they had at the start. That travel was beginning to wear him down should have meant nothing to her. Now, she felt odd. Would she still feel victorious if he failed her riddle? Or would it haunt her? Or would it haunt her, knowing she could only catch him at his worst? Did she want to catch him? She waited for him to make it to her oasis again. It seemed to be a part of the ritual to sit and watch the speck on the horizon grow to the size of a man. They didn't exchange pleasantries when he arrived. Instead, he gave a small nod to acknowledge her before climbing down from atop his camel. She hadn't demanded it prior because she knew all too well how easy it was to catch a camel. But there was still something respectful in the gesture. Here was a prince willing to die with dignity. Here was a man who lived and died by rules. Could she be blamed for admiring that? Only when he was fully settled in to listen did she begin her riddle. Toothless maw that eats all these, raw flesh, dung, fresh air, and trees. At night I am bright, in the day I am black. I die, I'm gone, but always back. She was on the third line when she saw his face light up. He waited to answer this time, more focused on being polite than showing off how clever he was. She liked that. She knew that he was clever, but now she knew that he could be patient too. Make campfire. It was one of her favorite riddles. The joy that she got was twofold. She was happy for the prince, happy that he would survive another day, and happy for herself too. It was infinitely preferable to lose with skill than to win through circumstance. She would feel robbed if she had to eat the prince on a bad day. If he lost, he needed to lose at his best. He needed to lose in a way that mattered. They went through the oasis again, but it lingered far longer. They spoke in moments about each other's lives, her memories of time before even Ramses, and his experience as the seventh in line to the throne. He was trusted to act as an emissary specifically because he was so far from inheriting the throne. Not that I'd want it anyway, he said. A camel is a better throne than any city golden chair. The seat in the palace only lets me see the bald spot on the high priest's head. The saddle on the camel lets me see all the beauty in the world. His head wasn't turned towards her when he said that, but she could see his eyes glance over at her. It was easy to pretend that she didn't notice, and he did nothing to press further. She showed him the best trees for picking dates, the best ponds for catching fish, and the first cave that she'd set her lair up in, back before even Ramses, back when she was much, much smaller. She slept in the next morning. The sunlight made a soft beam through the cave, over the pelts, before landing across her face. Any other day, it would have been a wonderful way to wake up. But the realization that she'd missed her chance to say goodbye made her scramble. She made a short flight over to the waters to see if he was gone, and got her answer before landing. There was no camel tied to the palms. Still, he'd left her a gift. The boar roasting on a glowing coals had clearly been caught the night before, and the fact that it was unspiced meant that it was for her. It was another oddly thoughtful gesture. How many humans would realize that unseasoned meat was a sphinx's preference? How many would research that far? She landed near the meal and approached. Down on the ground, there was so much more detail to see. The tracks of the camel, the care taken not to leave a mess, the simple note left beside the fire pit. She reached out and read it. I am sure you don't depend on travelers for your meals, but I do feel bad having deprived you twice. Enjoy the ball. I'll be back in 2 weeks. She hadn't taken a bite yet, but she could pretend the warmth in her stomach was the meal. 2 bites was all it took to make the illusion complete. She waited until the 15th day before flying. She wasn't sure what she'd expected. A sandstorm, perhaps, or a heat stroke. Camel. She wasn't sure what she'd expected. A sandstorm, perhaps, or a heat-struck camel. Instead, it was only a few minutes' flight before the smell of blood caught in the back of her throat. It was hard to describe what happened after that. Sometimes she was more mind than a monster. Sometimes she was more monster than mind. That day, she was Monster Day. That day was a monster day. He'd lost a lot of blood by the time she found him. A frankly terrifying amount of blood. She could carry him back to the oasis, but that'll only delay the inevitable. But Sphinx knew many things that the humans did not. She carried him, and he was light in her claws, light in the way that humans were, but some small, scared part of her brain was worried that the blood loss made him lighter still, like a date left in the sun. She followed the trail through the desert until she found the thieves that did this. They had his gifts and his spices. They'd have taken his clothes. They'd have taken the clothes off his corpse if they had been able to catch his camel. They'd have taken his life, the one human life that she'd valued in 1,000 years, and they'd have taken it. It was hard to hate humans. They were so small and short-lived that taking them personally felt childish. But this day, she hated, and it made killing easy. 5 of the 6 bandits were extraneous. The last, thankfully, had blood that smelled like the prince. He was much less thankful about this than she was. She took them both back. The prince held gently in her front talons. The bandit half crushed in her back. The transfer spell took exactly as much as it needed. It would have been crueler to let the bandit suffer the same fate he intended to inflict at the prince, to struggle on with too little blood until his body failed. It was tempting, but she felt a sick gratitude that he had what she needed when she needed it. So she made the end quick enough. 30 seconds isn't long, but it is an eternity when falling. The prince recovered enough to speak after 3 days. He asked her to tell him riddles, and if she was jealous of her domain, as she pretended, she'd have said no. But good riddles were the tool she used to rid herself of unwanted guests, and this guest was wanted. So she read riddles to him for days at a time, read all the ones that she'd hoarded from scholars, read ones she wrote herself just for fun. She started with her best riddles because she loved his praise, but moved on to her earlier ones because what they lacked in cleverness, they made up for in being earnest. He loved those riddles the most. 1 week stretched into 2. He spent his days swimming after fish, chasing after balls with spears made of stone. She hadn't seen that in a very long time, and scurrying up trees to pick dates. And his nights he spent imagining riddles around a campfire. She knew it wasn't going to be permanent, but that didn't mean that it couldn't be beautiful. She'd outlived so many things in this world, seen rivers change courses and lakes run dry. If impermanence was a poison, then it was a poison she couldn't avoid. There was no wall that she could build to keep death at bay. She could only share her home with it and hope that She could only share a home with it and hope that that one wonderful faraway day that even death would die. And that day would not be soon. The king's men found the oasis after a month of searching. There were no riddles this time. The prince left willingly, and the men with bronze blades stayed respectfully far from her part of the dirt. It went as good as it could have gone, all things considered. If some part of her felt empty afterwards, well, maybe she just needed to eat. Regular gifts did find her way to the dirt. As thanks after that, herds of goats were released near her borders to hunt at her own leisure. Soft pelts from the northern lands were delivered in chests, and she luxuriated in their fluff. Most importantly, a regular shipment of black vellum began to make its way to the dirt. She was told was explicitly that it was for her to write some more riddles, and also, if she had a spare moment, she could send letters back with its vendor. The prince always made sure to send at least one out to her, and she always made sure to send one back. Always. It had been decades. She couldn't see how humans were like this. She'd written with him 6 months ago. He'd been sharp as ever, sharper even. Time had winnowed him into a razor's edge. that she'd been so amazed to see him change. And then he'd gotten busy, and they'd stopped writing letters for just a month. And then it was 2 months, and then 3, and now he wasn't well. The last letter she'd received hadn't even been from him. It had been from his eldest brother, the reigning pharaoh, and it had broken her heart. He was forgetting everything. His mind was breaking. Decades of brilliance, and now he was falling apart at the seams. Some days he didn't even know who he was. But on the days that he did, the only thing he could talk about was going to the oasis one last time. And his brother, who had kept him close, who had been so protective of him after his near death with the bandits, had finally agreed. He was he was going to be arriving any day now. The note had a sort of helpless plea attached, that he didn't know what to do at this point, but that whatever it cost her to keep him comfortable, he would repay tenfold. She sent a letter back saying that it was a gift. She was the queen of the dirt, and it pleased her to give this to her neighboring kingdom. Never mind that her kingdom had no subjects. Never mind that she had no armies at her disposal. What she had, she could give, and this was easy. It made her happy to write the letter. It reminded her of the first words the prince had spoken to her all those years ago. He arrived a few days later, escorted by 50 soldiers. She was grateful that there was in one of his lucid moments. She couldn't imagine how it would be to be seen and not known. She didn't wait for them to make it all the way to her oasis. She flew over to meet them and then carried him back. The traditional wait was from when she thought she had time, before she'd realized that there were ways for even a mortal to find themselves in a hurry. She spent his first day back chasing fish. He spent his first day back chasing fish the same way he did before. The boars he left to be 70, he insisted, was far too old to be messing with boars. And when that evening came, they gathered by the campfire to share riddles. They went back and forth, laughing at each other's crafts. It was only after an hour of reminiscing that she actually asked him her favorite riddle. The riddle that she had permanently written in his riddle. The riddle that she had permanently written in as his riddle. The one with toothless maws and meat and light in the dark. And he stared at her, not blankly, but worse, confused, because he recognized the riddle, but could no longer answer it. She could see the distress growing in him, and it broke her heart. He hemmed and hawed, but right when he looked on the brink of giving up, he looked up at the fire and started in relief. "Hey, campfire," he said, and they laughed. And if he could pretend his tears were mirth and not mourning, she could pretend that hers were the same. He was not well the next day. He knew who he was, thankfully, but he didn't remember getting there. He stumbled around almost dazed until he saw her. Then he sighed in relief. "This is my favorite dream," he confided in her. "I'd like to go back to here and real one day. I'd like to get back here for real one day, but this dream is lovely. Can you read me some more riddles, just like last time? I've never forgotten." She didn't even touch her later works. She went to her earliest ones, the easy ones, and the way he pondered minutes at a time made her stomach clench. She did not sleep that night. She had spent literally her entire life trying to make harder and harder riddles. And now, they needed to be easy. They needed to be simple. They needed to be rhyme. They needed to be rhyme and feel like riddles. But they needed to be solvable by someone that she had to stop writing for a few moments to compose herself. She couldn't afford to cry on the venom. A new shipment wouldn't arrive in time. She was immortal, but she was still running out of time. He woke up the next morning completely confused. She prepared her first riddle as, who sits in the sand beside my lair, who swims through fish, has the thin white hair, who braved the desert and survived, then returned home alive and thrived. But after several seconds of silence, she couldn't take it anymore. It's you, she said. Oh, he replied, surprised. What do you know about this place? She asked after several more long seconds of quiet. No, not a lot, he admitted. But I know I love you. I love you too, she said. That was the only riddle that she had for the day. He fell asleep in the mid-morning, and she took the time to go catch a goat for them. He was still asleep when she returned, and remained that way the rest of the day. She stayed awake long after sunset, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, and praying that it would never stop. She wasn't sure when she fell asleep. She just knew that when she woke up, her prayer had gone unanswered. The venom vendor arrived at the start of the deep duet, only to find the oasis empty. He looked for hours, but there was only a single venom left behind in the cave. He grabbed it and read the half-finished riddle. What hungers and is never full? What is complete but never whole? What pierces armor, shields, and hearts? What ends before it starts? What ends before it even starts? What force can make a monster thrall? What talon and what dreadful claw can heal the slice it makes each day? What pain can make the godless pray? It was all he could do. It was all he could take back to the Pharaoh. It was all that he could take back to the Pharaoh. He hoped it was enough. End of story. So the music volumes change between tracks. They're not normalized, but I'm not recording the music, so it doesn't affect the reading. Right. Excuse me. What am I doing? Stopping the recording. Yeah. So, I have shared this before. It should be in the description as well. I do have descriptors of the voices. Descriptors that don't necessarily make sense to other people, but that make sense to me. For instance, M9 is snooty, open mouth, speaking with roof, which makes sense to me. But it may not make sense to anybody else. So all of my voices have notes. Fair enough. I mean, mine will more normally describe the type of voice, how to use it for me. So a very easy way to describe this to me is
So M10 is American Low Central. The Low Central isn't related to my voice in pitch, and it isn't related to geography. It means low, so slightly lower pitch, and central as in speed. But yeah, so I mean, I think the problem with giving characters specific voices, which is great, and is I may not be able to do that specific voice. But being more descriptive is the correct way to read a story, or to write a story. And the more descriptive about the character you are, the better. For readers. It does help me, but then, like I said, it puts me in a position where I may not be able to do a specific type of voice. So I just have to wing it. Fair enough. I mean, posting online encourages you to try and keep it as short as possible. But as a general rule, I think being a bit more descriptive about characters helps. But I'm a narrator, not a writer, so writing conventions aren't necessarily my area of expertise. Alrighty, 2 stories done. We are 1, 2, 3, 4 days ahead. It's a miracle. Miracle, I tell you. Right, just want to generate some backgrounds so we can get the editing going. Thank you for the kind words, Jason. Not really. I think any trope can get tiresome if it's overused. Which is unfortunate. But true. So, I mean, I love the more comedic tropes. But that's just a personal preference. But I mean, with the nature of Reddit and all of that, any trope that is moderately successful will become overused. It's why you find batches of stories that are very similar. Because you'll read a story and be like, oh, I like this, and then you write your own thing. It's very similar to it. Good afternoon, Nick Stone. Hope you're doing well. I mean, it's not also like genre. It's not, zombies is a genre, so tropes would be something that is set in a genre. But I mean, again, any good trope that an audience likes will be overused. it is just the nature of social media, or is the nature of creating media. You see it in YouTube as well as in writing. Alrighty, that's done. Recovery's getting there. Doctor has stated that I have full range. Just need to build up the stamina, which we should be at around 60% recovered. In a rough number, but you know, getting stronger every day. An actual, honest-to-God sponsorship offer. I get so many spam offers, it's ridiculous. Very few actual offers. Alright, and that's that. Cheers, Crusader. We'll see you later. Alright, time for some thumbnails. The thing is, most offers are done through middlemen. What do you call them? Agencies. So if you say no once, they stop asking. So, I mean, there are things that I would never, in a million years, do as a sponsorship. Anything crypto or money related, specifically. So if you say no to those sorts of offers, they just put you on a list saying, you know, don't ask this person because they say no. I think I've gotten like 4 actual sponsorship offers throughout my YouTube career. Thank you very much, Amankira44, for the follow. It is very much appreciated. So we're doing this. Alrighty. This is no worries, I don't care. No worries. These things happen. That's why I have 3 Steam accounts. 2 of them I can't access. Oh, I'm glad they enjoy. Oh, right. Generating something. I try to be more of a storyteller than necessarily a narrator or voice actor or anything like that. I don't barely consider myself a narrator or voice actor. Just a guy. Talks to his computer. Tries to tell good stories. I can put my glasses back on. That's good. Busy talking with an AI to generate a picture for me. So I'm not ignoring you, chat. Definitely here, doing things. That's the problem with streaming work, is you can't pay as much attention as one would normally for what is required for a stream. The first one was about the starship that sacrificed itself to protect the evacuation ship. I also don't have enough screen space to show everything that I'm doing and to move everything around, so that I did would just be very confusing for everyone. Ramming speed. Definitely ramming speed. Right, so this is... Yeah, that works. On to the next one. Indeed, indeed. Some days are good days to die. Especially protecting. Awesome. How meow brown cow. Meow meow meow. That's awesome. Nick Stone, have you tried Epic Loot? Or, more specifically, there is no Epic Loot, you're only puns. If you enjoy that sort of thing. Although Epic Loot is more of a comedic story than a serious story. Yes, the duck dragons are pretty funny. Good afternoon, Dustin. I hope you're doing well. Same to you, Robert. I hope you're doing well. My pleasure, Nick. It's also one of the oldest series. I think it's actually the oldest series that I started. Forked Life is good. A Thief Lord is also good. Those two are very more similar to Solo Apocalypse, but both are on a hiatus.
fair enough. I've had mornings like that. Well, the energy has gone away. Far, far away, in a land far, far away. Nope, close that. So we got the 2 thumbnails done. We can go to the big screen. Righty, what are we going for? 3 hours. That's awesome. That is very awesome. We can move this. Nope, 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 not that. This. Over here. Right. Yes. Well, that reminds me of the story, break a coffee pot. In case of emergency, break a coffee pot. That was quite funny. Oh no, I'm out of liquid refreshments. Should have prepared better. Thankfully, I don't have any narrations to go, so shouldn't need too much in the way of liquid refreshment. Well, we're at the end of the stream. Now I can do the deep voice, because my voice is a bit haggard. How are we doing, chat? Roar. Deep voice. We can close that. Key. Oh, excuse me. That's awesome to hear, Jason. You're right, that is an awesome morning. Thank you, Donald. It's very much appreciated. Still got 30 minutes. We can chit-chat, chinwag. A lollygag, if you will. Thank you very much for the follow, Flubbard. Flubrid. I hope you're doing well this day. This Wednesday, according to my wood wrist. So that is my biggest weird thing in life, is I never know what day of the week it is, ever. Because I don't work normal time and don't work normal days. So I forget stuff, not because I forget when stuff is, I just forget what today is relative to stuff. Probably not. Those are all still under copyright. So they will never, in a million years, give me access to that copyright. So I will not be. The only way I could do it is if it was in public domain. So these stories that I do, I've asked the author's permission and received the author's permission. To not do so is copyright infringement. Changing a written story into an audio story is not transformative in any way, according to the courts. So, seeing as June is still making movies, it's under copyright. Asimov's, some of his earlier stuff is would be public domain. But I can't remember which ones. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it does make things go quicker, but sometimes that's not a good thing. Edgar Rice Burroughs. Well, funny you should mention that. I narrated Princess of Mars, and nobody cared. So, probably not. Not to say nobody cared. It wasn't really that much of a hit. It didn't get many views. Now, the problem with anything that is in the public domain is it'll be narrated to death by, well, people like me, in fact.
So there are channels that have every single popular story that's in the public domain. They've done it in a million different ways. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no, 4, 5, 6. 6 of Asimov's works are in the public domain, which is Youth, Let's Get Together, The Genetic Effects of Radiation, interesting, Worlds Within Worlds, books 1, 2, and 3. But like I said, public domain stuff gets narrated to death.
Oh, excuse me. Ugh.
The post-narration yawns. So if we keep up this pace, by Friday, we will have narrated all the stories up until next Thursday. This is pretty cool. And then by the time... yeah, by the time we finish next week, we should be 2 weeks ahead on TFOS. Just in time for me to get sick. And once we're 2 weeks ahead on TFOS, I can start doing the re-TFOS again. And then once we're 2 weeks ahead on that, we can start with the series. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Oh, excuse me. Definitely got the yawns. Once you start, you can't stop. It's kind of like marshmallows. By law, you're not allowed to stop eating marshmallows. Once you open that packet and you eat the first marshmallow, it's a legal mandate that you need to finish them. Holding them in doesn't make it any easier. Looks like I'm about to burst into tears. Same as Pringles as well. Yes. I mean, my two favorite Pringles is salt and vinegar and chutney. The others are okay, but those are the two best ones. Again, holding it in. Oh. If I ever need to do a crying scene, it's quite easy. I just need to yawn several times and look like I'm in tears.
Well, I eat them straight out the packet, so no crackers required. You eat the chocolate separate. Cheese and chives, okay. But Willards make, I think, a better one. No, Lay's. Lay's cheese and chives is pretty good. Magic. Man, that's what tech she has. Just voodoo magic. It's good, I think, Donald. It's always good to be busy. Though I'm not entirely sure whether it being a hospital keeping you busy is a good or bad thing. She could be. If she's an elf, then I'm a dwarf. She's a techno wizard. I haven't edited in years, and I'm so happy I haven't. I don't enjoy editing. Not my favorite part of the process. Fair enough, Donald. Fair enough. Boring is underrated. Cheers, Nick Stone. Have a great day. Yes, diggy diggy hole. Although that's mostly the dog. Watching the stream from earlier with the volume turned off or mute. Very weird. It's like, what was I talking about that made me do that? Oh my goodness me. Ugh. Yeah, you get some dogs who just do that. It's very weird. My dog does that on occasion. You walk inside and you just have two front paws dirty and a dirty nozzle. You're like, I know what you were doing. Yes, precursive maintenance. Just hit it and keep it until it starts working. Although, yeah. It doesn't work with sinuses. Can't punch them. I've tried. My fist doesn't fit up my nose, so I can't punch the sinuses. And if it could, well, I'd have other problems. Lovely. Yeah, very close to siesta time. Although I try not to nap during the day. Misses with my night sleep. Strange thing is I can fall asleep easier during the day than I can at night. Welcome back, Crusader.
Yeah, I mean, it goes in phases. Like I said, with one story successful, you'll always get 10 that are similar and successful. So, I mean, there are phases in HFY. Yeah, they didn't ask for it. Oh my goodness. Oh, I just clicked my back. That wasn't fun. Clicked my lower back. Definitely not fun. Right, I think I'm gonna end it. I know it's a little bit early, but I am yawning my head off, which is not good entertainment. So, I think I'll call it. I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me. It is very much appreciated. Hope I was at least able to entertain you a little bit. The videos will be out at the regular times, and I'll see you same time, same place tomorrow. Hopefully we can go for a bit longer, but we'll have to wait and see. Alright, I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great one.